Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Jackie Ma. And today I'm really excited to bring on a beloved sister, Dr. Tash, who is steeped in the women's wisdom. So we share a great passion for the work, the sacred work of our time. So just really looking forward to diving in today in all things pregnancy, wombs, sexuality, the great spirit, and everything that moves us and keeps us alive and vibrant and creating in the world. So thank you so much for joining us, Tash. Welcome.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be on your platform. I
Mm,
absolutely adore your work and adore you as a person. So it really is an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you too. I'm really excited. So
Cheers.
let's see where we want to dive in. So, Tash, tell us first a little bit about your work and what you're doing.
Okay, so my background is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and I also work in the area of fertility, women's health, womb consciousness, healing the womb, sexual abuse, all of those types of areas. And I
Mhm.
also work with men, but more so just for fertility and helping them with their sperm. And then I also am an integrative pelvic health teacher, facilitator, and an integrative breath flow teacher as well. So I
Mm,
run a lot of workshops helping women understand how to open up the pelvis, their breath, the diaphragm, so that we can really move into the structures of the stability of our bones and fascia
mm,
and the hidden parts of ourselves. And when we move those hidden parts of ourselves, we move the hidden parts of our own emotions and psyche as well. So it's
mm.
beautiful.
I love that. It is. It's really delicious. Just getting into the bones of these bodies, bringing all of us to incarnate fully.
Yes.
It's like, it's a big job,
Mm.
right? Like, and we weren't trained consciously our whole lives. Like
Mm.
now, so as we're older, we're all like, oh, this is how we do it. This is how you breathe. Like,
Yeah.
imagine, we think about it and we take it for granted because we've always breathed and we've always had this vessel, but we never really learned how to drive the car,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. And breath is really becoming really popular. There's a
I
lot of breath
know.
work at the moment. And I love breath work. It has its own place.
Mhm.
And also a lot of the other types of breathing exercises like pranayama and all of
Yeah.
that has its own place too. But with integrative women's breath flow, it's very gentle. It's
Mm,
really that yin, feminine breath.
okay.
And so it becomes this very relaxing breath where I teach you how those structures are moving, how the breath is opening up the front of the diaphragm, the back, the ribs, the throat, the pelvic floor.
Mm,
And so it starts to awaken parts of you that really allows your heart to be centered in that space with gentleness to
mm,
reduce that anxiety. And it's really beautiful for men as well. It takes them and allows them to come into the yin space because breath work sometimes can be very intense and very tiring and it
Yeah.
can be very overwhelming sometimes for women. So this is a very different type of practice. It's sort of the integrative pelvic health and the breath flow is actually based on 40 years of research through osteopathy, myofascial chains, how to open them up, anatomy, movement, and perineum. So, and also inner dream journeying, shamanic dream journeying. So, I kind of open those areas up and then take you through a dreamtime journey inside the body once you're really fully centered in the anatomy and understand the body instead of going upwards,
Yeah.
which we do always in meditation. We tend to go
Yeah.
up, but really, we need to descend down, as into that womb portal.
Oh, it sounds delicious.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And through the teachings that I was taught, I've then expanded that a little bit more for women, where in the workshops, I also talk about the nature of the elements and what season we're in.
Amen.
So, yeah, it kind of brings that weaving of traditional Chinese medicine and the organs and how we can really support on a very spiritual level, to a mental level, to a body level. And once we understand the seasons and we understand the seasons of the body, it becomes our superpower because
Yeah.
we understand what's coming up for us, what's coming up with the elements. And so we can teach, I sometimes teach qigong movements in
Mm,
the workshop to open these meridians up depending on what season we're in.
yeah.
And then I'll usually take them through a little bit of embody birth belly dance, which I was
Okay.
a facilitator in. So we've got to move those hips
Absolutely.
for women,
Absolutely.
which is so divine. I love it. And, you know,
Hmm.
because my background is also, I used to be a hip hop dancer when I was studying my Chinese medicine. So I just love dancing. I think it's the best for women.
It
You know,
is.
yeah,
It's
it's
such a
divine.
direct route for us,
Oh,
right?
isn't
It's
it?
like super fast.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
medicine. And I
it
think
is.
people forget that because I remember when I was studying to be a doctor, I was still dancing as a hip hop dancer, and
Awesome.
people would come up to me going, "Oh, that's too provocative. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be a doctor. You need to behave
Yeah.
this way."
Ah,
And they didn't get it. I'm like, this is energy. This is
yeah.
how I boost my vital force through my hips. And now it's just beautiful because it's part of what I do.
Yeah.
And to really understand that when we move the hips, we unblock the blood, we
Mm.
unblock the chi that's causing a lot of these hormonal imbalances, you know?
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah,
A hundred
yeah.
percent. And what I love hearing you say so much, and what I obviously relate to so fully in myself, is like all these different teachings. We're like going in and picking the fruit, right? Of like, okay, I need this, I need this, this is what I'm going to need. And then it is like a symbiosis and it just grows. And it's like whatever fruit is needed for the women that come, whatever their souls need to pull from the tree, it's
Mm,
available for them. And it's like, it can be a myriad of different things. It's like, what's the cocktail then? Like that's going to be just right for this group of
mm,
women or these, you know, these souls. So I love that. It's like we're shattering the frameworks of like, what does a doctor look like? What does a healer look like? And you
yeah,
get to be like the hip hop dancer, you get to be the ancestral dantress. You know, we get to be all of the things
yeah.
without the meanings that were assigned to them before. Now we're like claiming real freedom,
Oh,
right? In
100%.
like the fullness of what does it mean to inhabit the body without the digested programming and belief. Like it's so
Yeah.
full than the container.
Oh, you've said it so beautifully. I love it.
Oh,
And
I
it,
love
it, it
it.
really is. It really is because we're not embodying what we're learning, what we're doing through that real somatic healing that's needed. We're
Yeah.
so used to being in the mind, and
Mm.
especially women in corporate jobs, you know, caring for other kids or, you know, whatever jobs they're in the mind all the time, in the logical mind. And so even fertility becomes like this.
Yes.
Okay,
It
right?
stops being
It's a
sexy
factor.
and stops
Yes,
being in like the deliciousness of being with your partner. And it becomes like I have to in a framework and a timeline. And
yes, yes.
it is no bueno.
No. And we know, and we know that we can't control this. There's a third party involved. There's a soul involved.
Hmm.
So even when we're doing any type of natural fertility to IVF, especially IVF can be so systemized. It's so controlled. Okay, you have the egg collection, you have the transfer, you should be pregnant now. And so a lot of that magic can be lost. And
Hmm.
like you said, the relationship gets impacted between your
Yes.
partner. And that becomes a problem because what is a baby born from? Love,
Exactly.
the highest frequency of love.
Yeah.
And so if we can come back into that connection, in that intimacy, then that creates that potent juice for conception, that fire that we need for
Yeah.
conception.
Mhm.
And that's really housed in the heart. It's housed in the womb. It's housed in the kidneys from a Chinese medicine
Yeah.
perspective. So we can't be in fear, which is hard because we are in fear, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But it's like return back to the heart, return back to doing things that you love.
Hmm.
Forget about the fertility that's going to happen anyway. We're
Yeah.
still working on that. But do things that bring joy into your life
Yeah.
so that the heart can expand. And there is a vessel that goes down to the uterus in Chinese medicine that can also expand, where more
Mm.
nutrients and oxygen can come through to say, hey, it's safe to bring a baby into this world. And
Yes.
that is a form of your medicine for fertility. Instead of making it so complicated sometimes, you know?
Oh, I know. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. And it feels
Yeah.
so simple when we're saying it, but right, it's not when you're on the journey, right?
Yeah.
When those
And
women are sitting in front of us and there's grief and there's fear, and it's
mm,
like how beautiful it is now. I don't know, and I want to hear your story, but like
yeah.
we now are stepping in as these I don't know how you refer to yourself, as either as elders or as sisters that show up for these other women. And there were
Yeah.
times in our lives when we didn't have these infrastructures weren't always present, like to have women to be able to talk about all these things with. And
Mm,
like coming up, I want to hear a little bit about your story and kind of like how you came into the work. But
mm,
I do want to say, like, for me, when I was a teenage mother and pregnant, like, there were
mm,
not wise women surrounding me that were supporting me, right? And now I
mm,
get to be that wise woman for other women, hopefully.
mm. Of
And so, like,
course.
right, those infrastructures of like, wow, there actually are allies around that know how to help you get into your heart and know how to help you get into your womb, instead of in like just being in the Western medicalized industrialized complex where we
Yeah.
are just living in our heads completely, like we're here now, right? Like
Mm,
there's a generation of midwives who are on this planet who are holding space for the rebirth of our souls, for the children that are coming in. And I didn't see that present for me when I was coming up, but it's
mm,
like
mm.
alive now.
Oh, yes.
So,
Your
yeah,
stories brought you here to
yeah,
do this beautiful work. I think that's just phenomenal.
totally.
And it really is. And I think women are starting to wake up to this. We're
Mhm.
starting to talk a lot more about it. And even beginning around our menstrual cycle, a lot of
Yeah.
people are starting to talk about the seasons of our menstrual cycle, or even, gym instructors are starting to figure out when women are in their cycle and adjusting their training.
Mhm.
So I think it's starting to, but there's still a long way to go for
There
sure.
is. Yeah.
And it's also the understanding that it's not even just fertility. It's, working with women who've got hormonal or gynecological issues, who are going through menopause, who are going through all of these different stages of being a woman,
Mhm.
and the trauma that we hold in our womb, the generational trauma, like you said, the abuse, our boundaries being crossed. Every
Mhm.
emotion that we felt in our mother's womb is held here and
Mhm.
imprinted onto us. So we need to look at all of that. And I always say
Mhm.
to women, no matter where you are on your healing journey, the journey of love, you will always return back to the womb because it's the
Mm.
beginning,
It
it's the
is. It's the
home.
beginning and it's the end. It's everything.
Exactly. Mm.
It is.
And it's almost like that lost knowledge when women start accessing it, or we start educating and experiencing it. It's like, why didn't I learn this? Why was this not taught to me?
Yeah.
And there's this fury about it that women have been shut
Sure.
down in this way and not been able to access their true power and their true wisdom.
Yeah.
But that's all changing now.
It is all changing now. One of the, like, I know you know it too, like those moments where it drops in and you're like, oh my God, I love what I do. Like when a
Yeah.
woman is sitting in front of you, even if she's grieving, melting, whatever's happening, but you know that she gets it. Like you feel
Mm.
it drop into her and you see her having a lived experience, which is like, oh my God, I have the answer inside of me. Like, I
Mm.
understand. I feel my womb pulsing when I'm talking about it. Just this, like, I really have it inside. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, okay, let's keep going. Come on. Like, because
Yes.
I know for you, I'm sure you experience this too. Sometimes the
Mm.
stories are intense, like the trauma that
Mm.
women come with, like
Mm.
to be able to love and hold space for a lot of
Mm.
that. I mean, it's big. It's a big energy. It's
Yeah.
like watching people hurt and go through a lot of pain is it can be
Mm.
really intense,
Yeah.
right?
I think it can be very, very intense. And I think because I've always been in this field for a long time now, like
Yeah.
I've been a Chinese medicine doctor for 8 years, but I think my background of sort of my story and what's happened to me has helped me really understand women, where now I'm not really scared of anything that they experience because I feel like I've experienced it all
Experience it
anyway.
too. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a level of depth that we can go to. We can go so much deeper than some other people. Like, because
Yeah.
I see women coming to me going, "Oh, you're very different. You're not a normal Chinese medicine doctor. You're not a normal acupuncturist. You're
Yeah,
really different."
you
And I'm
must
like,
really get that a lot
"Yeah,
because obviously in any of these fields that it like but you're doing it at a multidimensional level.
yes." And I've never been one to go with the crowd
Yeah.
or go with what I've been taught.
Yeah.
And actually, everything that I teach around the womb has been experiential. It
Yeah.
hasn't come from a book. It hasn't come from
Same.
anywhere.
Same.
And it's interesting because I have my degree as a Chinese medicine doctor, it gives me the status to be able to talk about this, which is just crazy because the thing is that ultimately women have this knowledge. We are the
Yeah.
book of knowledge.
We are the book.
We are the book and we
Mhm.
have so much that we know. And so when patients come and see me, the first thing I tell them is, I am not your healer. I am not your doctor. I'm here just as a guide for you to remember that you are the doctor of your life. You are the healer
Mhm.
of your life. And that's really important because otherwise they put the searching for their answers through
Through
me.
you. Yeah.
It's not about that because ultimately, even though I know a lot about health and I know a lot about the body and I know a lot about hormones, ultimately every single person is unique.
Yeah.
And sometimes a specific herb might not be good for you. A
Mhm.
specific supplement may not be needed to take every day. So it's like not learning to conform to the system of what we have been told.
Yeah.
Move outside of that a little bit. And so the first thing I usually do when I get women coming in is I get them asking questions of their womb. I get them putting their hand on their heart, on their womb. I get them connected to the breath, coming back into the body. And then we'll ask simple yes or no questions
Mhm.
just to get
Same.
them
Yeah.
connecting with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, what vegetable should I eat right now? What color should I wear? What word do I need to focus on? And it's amazing because once they do this, it's exactly what we have just talked about within their health,
Yeah.
right? It might be like their immune system's down and they need to have orange and they didn't
Mhm.
realize it.
Yeah.
Or the specific word or the vegetable is the best vegetable to regulate their hormones,
Mhm.
and they would know that. So it's really beautiful when they start stepping into that connection. And it's really uplifting because exactly you see it in their eyes,
Yeah.
the tears. It's
Yeah.
wow, I can do this. Oh my gosh, that was so clear. Oh my goodness. So
Yeah.
it's very beautiful. It's heartwarming for me. Soul nourishing.
I love that. It is. It's all nourishing. Mm.
Mm.
Lean in. Tell me a little bit about, tell us about your story, like how you came to this, whatever, yeah, whatever you feel like you want to
Yeah,
get
of
through.
course. So it was interesting because growing up, I was actually born in France. I was born in Paris. And we moved to Australia when I was about 7 after my dad passing away.
Mhm.
And growing up, I had a very hard relationship with my father because I was also sexually abused by him from the age of 4 to 7. And when he passed away, we moved to Australia, and my mum was one of 10 children. So she was the
Wow.
youngest. Yeah, and our whole family coming from a Sri Lankan culture was quite strict. It was quite controlling, quite abusive. Women didn't have any rights. We were always wrong. We couldn't
Mm.
speak up. And so my mum was very much controlled. So when we came to Australia, I couldn't really talk about my sexual abuse. It was kind of, you know, it would get me into a lot of trouble.
Mm.
And so seeing that and seeing my mum going through violence and being hit by her own uncle, by her own brothers, I became very angry. I was a very angry child. I had so much rage. And I think I also naturally, out of my whole family, I was a little bit stronger to be able to say something. I wasn't scared as much as everyone else. So I fought back. At the age of 15, I actually got a restraining order against my uncle and it broke up the whole family. And I was just like, no, this is not going on any longer. And during that time, there was so much anger I had to deal with. I was seeing so much. We grew up in poverty. We were living on food stamps and we're living in commission housing. And so my whole life was very much about feeling insecure and not confident about who I am and
Mm.
not having enough. And so it took me down this space of really sitting and connecting with myself. And I would find ways of healing, not through a counselor or a psychologist, which I was taken to for sure. However, I sat there and I would be like, I know all of this. This is not helping me. You know, at even a very young age,
Yeah.
at 16, 17, I was like, no, I already know all my problems because I was so good at reflecting. I was very deep in that way. And so I think it was up until the age of when I got kicked out of school and I went and did my beauty therapy course. I then recognized at the age of 17, oh, I'm actually smart. Because at that point, I was smoking weed, I was taking
Yeah.
drugs, I was stealing, I was doing everything. And up until that point, I left all of my friends at the age of 17. And I went into this 1 year journey of getting my diploma as a beauty therapist, regaining my memory, and
Mhm.
starting to recognize, oh, I like this health journey. I like learning about health. I like learning about the body. Oh my goodness, I'm actually smart. And I remember at the time thinking, but can I do this as a career? Because I was raised with so much poverty and you need a man to support you in your life. You can't do this. And so there was a lot of issues around me actually working and making it and doing well and taking that next step. So then I decided to go back to school after being kicked out and finishing just my year 12. And when I did that, it took me into an area where I started to recognize I wanted to be in the health industry.
Mhm.
And so later on in my mid 20s, I decided to go into Chinese medicine. And that was the most incredible experience because that's when I really understood me. You know, I really started to understand a lot of the trauma that I was holding in my womb, the abuse that was still there, the reason why I was attracting bad relationships over and over again and thinking, but I'm a good person. Why is this happening
Mhm.
to me? And I was holding the energy and the vibration of my father and the anger and the abuse. So it took me down through deep healing with healers, with awakening my own consciousness, with really not blaming anyone for being abused, for going through violence, taking full responsibility for my life, which was something very difficult for other people to understand
Yeah.
because I've started coming into a place where I wasn't angry at my father for being abused. I was
Mhm.
moving into gratitude for the experiences of what I was learning and shifting my abuse into my gift.
Amen.
Um, so that was my first portal into going, I'm not going to blame anymore, and moving into that field where 5 years ago I then had a spiritual awakening. And it was very interesting because a friend of mine has said that to me. She's like, "You're about to have an awakening." And I said, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, your guides want to start downloading information into your field." And I thought, this is just crazy. What? I don't even understand this fully. She's like, "Just go and meditate. They need your permission." And I
Mhm.
thought, okay, fine, let me go meditate. And I said, okay, I'm ready for the
I'm
downloads.
here. Yeah.
I'm here. And I'm not even joking, within 5 minutes, my fingers started
Yep.
uncontrollably writing symbols. I started tapping into different parts of my brain and seeing different past lives of where I was in
Mhm.
Egypt and I could do sound healings through the pyramids, to Africa as a medicine woman, to
Mhm.
Atlantis. And then I came back into my body and my throat was doing all these weird things and my tongue. And then I started to speak 10 different light languages.
Mhm.
And it was phenomenal. There was so much energy pulsing through my body. I actually looked like I was on drugs because I was so
I know. I hear you.
high.
Yep.
So high. And ultimately that awakening was so familiar to me. It was like, oh wow, I've done this before because this doesn't feel scary to me. And in that moment, it changed my life because it took me to another level where spirit spoke to me and said, you're here to heal the womb. You're here to bring the new children in. The children will find you. You're here to raise the frequency of the parents outside of what you do, but upgrade the DNA, their light, strengthen that through psychic surgery. And we're here. All of that, all of your guides are here with you. And this is going to shift very quickly. And it did. That first year, I treated 1,000 patients
Oh my God.
with this new medicine that I was
Yeah.
gifted. And it was like, wow, okay, I'm on a spiritual timeline. Okay, I get it. And the biggest thing that came through that awakening was I'm here as service to the world. I'm just a minute dot in the universe, yet so connected to everything. And it was this real humbling experience for me where I thought, wow, like this is phenomenal from where I've come from, that
Mm.
it all makes sense now. It all makes
Yeah.
sense now. And now I'm not scared of treating women who've been abused,
Yep.
violence, poverty, feel like they're nothing, feel unworthy, feel like they can't make anything out of themselves because I've come from
Yep.
that. So for that, for me, that's very honoring. It almost brings tears to
Mm.
my eyes. It's just
Yeah.
very honoring. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to take a deep breath into that. I love it.
Mm.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for me, I mean, and I think in women,
Mm.
that's the embodiment journey for real. Like it's not, yes,
Yeah.
you can't go to school and I mean, you can go to school and learn a great many things, and that will be
Yeah.
part of it. But everything else, it's generated from the soul. It comes from
Mm.
everything we've acquired throughout space and time. In reality, everything that we're doing right now, none of it's new.
Yeah.
Right? The technology, it's new, meaning it's coming from a different dimension, but
Yeah.
it's new to Earth maybe, but it's not new to you,
Yeah.
right? But it's part of you. It's one with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
And it's interesting because I've had to kind of like through the awakening, I almost had to battle a little bit because this
Mm.
was going so outside of the norm of being a Chinese medicine practitioner.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, who am I? And how is this
Yeah.
going to be received? I'm speaking all these different languages that at the time I didn't even fully understand. I just knew that I was seeing things through the body as it was happening. And patients were experiencing phenomenal things. You know, they were going through, they were giving birth. They were saying to me, I've had a stillbirth. This is not from this life. And their bodies were convulsing. And I was seeing the serpent, I was seeing dragons, I was seeing so much. I was seeing very dark things as well in the portal of the womb that needed to
Oh
be
yeah.
cleared. And it was almost like I was getting a sift and I was sifting all the way through the womb until I found the gold. You know, it was
I know.
pulling out, pulling out, pulling out. And I had to be so rooted in who I am to hold that
Hold
type of
that.
frequency. And I realized that the light languages I was speaking were very deep, were very um, shamanic, African,
Mhm.
Hebrew, Egyptian. It was very um, cultural and very almost a little bit like I was an elder or I was the wise woman. And it
Mhm.
was bringing that energy of the warrior. So women really felt
Mm.
safe no matter
Yeah.
what they were going through in the journey of the
Love
healing.
that.
And that was interesting for me. I was like, wow, my all of my languages are very deep in that way, in those
Mhm.
tones and moving into those high frequencies of the mother energy as well. But yeah, it was very, very interesting at different levels of my of the healing that was taking place within the women. It was very
Yeah.
profound. Oh, I could write a book in just that
Yeah.
because
I
it's really
hear
phenomenal.
you.
Yeah. And you would experience it too, being in this
Yeah.
portal. It's magic what
It
comes
is
through.
magic. And I
Mm,
love how it will come through different for again, like whatever anybody needs. Like the light language
mm,
will be different for each particular soul.
yeah.
It's like it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like
And just
anything.
harmony, the
Yeah,
harmony.
it
And it
is.
was interesting because I was even doing it for kids. So the
Mhm.
mothers who would have their babies would then come and see me. And I started to recognize that even 5 minutes, 10 minutes of light language was just, the
Like,
kids were just absorbing
yeah.
straight away. And so the women would bring them in as soon as they'd been vaccinated because they could
Mhm.
see the frequency change in the
Yep.
child. And then I would do the light language and pull out the
Mm.
darkness of the
Yeah.
vaccine inside.
Yeah.
And some crazy things happened. Like I had a mother recording, sorry, a grandmother recording the child at one point just because she wanted to show her daughter because the child always comes in. And even though the mother's not very open spiritually, she knows that the child always is better after seeing me.
Yep.
So she's like, just take it to Tash. I don't know what she does, but just take him to Tash.
Uh-huh.
And so they took him to me straight after he'd been vaccinated on the same day.
Mm.
And she recorded that. And as she was recording, as I was pulling out, you could actually hear in the recording the demonic darkness of what I was pulling out. And I
Yeah.
thought, wow, I've actually got it now in footage. And you could see it. The child even was doing certain things where he knew exactly when I was pulling out that
Mm.
darkness within that was playing inside the blood level.
Yeah.
And so this is when I recognize this is so needed. I need to do this work in this
Yes.
way through Chinese medicine and bridging into this spirit
Mm,
level, because this is when we can really shift fertility, the health,
yeah.
the womb, the babies, everyone, planet, life.
Yeah.
We're balancing mind, body, spirit. We're elevating to this higher wisdom that we can connect to. And so,
Mm,
yeah, I wouldn't change it for the life of me now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it feels so loving and clear in the way you're bridging. And
Yeah.
it's not for a lot of people. So it
No.
feels really harmonious because I mean I know that everybody's on their own path and it takes time to get to a place of that comfort, right?
Mm,
So it feels really elegant, like the energy feels really beautiful that you're able to like you're really sitting in it in a
yeah.
way that is like, yeah, it feels really gregorious and
Mm,
yeah, and so loving and so respectful of like the craft
mm,
itself. Like
yeah.
it's a space of fullness because you
Mm,
get to bring your whole spiritual essence into the work through the entire container in whatever way you want. So you're it's not compartmentalized.
no. And it's always just gently transitioning people into that.
Yeah.
Like 99% of my patients are all referrals. So people know when they come
Yeah.
in to see me, I don't fuck around.
Yeah.
I get right in there,
Exactly. Yeah.
like it's like, let's get in there.
Mhm.
And so most people will walk out going, wow, I can't even explain what just happened because it's so
Mhm.
intense. You take us through like a dreamtime journey, and it's like professional singing for an hour.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing when we're going into these types of journeys. And but first I'll get their bodies rooted and grounded through acupuncture.
Mhm.
So we're really just opening up the channels, bringing the balance, balancing their mind and body spirit, starting at that level, working on their health, working on the food, working on their environment, working on their sleep, their mental state.
Yeah.
Get that foundation a little bit better, get their body strong enough so that they're ready for the next process. And I just feel anyone who comes to see me, it's because on a soul level, you were always meant to come and see me.
Mhm.
We always said that, right, before we were born.
Yeah.
So I know that you're meant to be here and I'm meant to plant whatever seed that's supposed to come through you. But ultimately, if you're ready, you'll be here. And that's just it. If you want to go to the next level, you will. And it's okay. We're all at different levels of our journey.
We are.
And I've had to learn how to explain what I do in a very logical way, in a very simple way. And I think the more we can become spiritual, the more we can explain it in the most
Most
digestible,
simple. Yeah.
easy way.
Yeah.
It means you understand your craft. I feel like sometimes people go too woo woo
Yeah.
and they go to a place where you can't even understand it,
I
right?
couldn't agree more. And I remember when I would do that. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? So and then once I started the podcast and then people would like send me their bios, I'd be like, I respect you, but I just want to be clear. Nobody even is going to know what we're talking about here.
yeah,
So yeah, it's like really how to bring it into the simplicity, as you said.
yeah.
Because
And then you've got because what happens when you do that is then you're able to access everyone,
yeah.
not just one type of person that we're so used to attracting.
Yes.
Here, you get to talk about the work with parents, with men even.
And
How do
yes.
we make it digestible for them?
Oh, I want to
And
lean into that with you after you're done because I love the
yeah.
topic of men.
So it's just learning how to kind of bridge. And so for me, it's very important to bridge Eastern, Western, and
Yeah.
spiritual energy together.
Mhm.
And once we do that, we can really understand it on multi levels. How do we understand and interpret blood tests into Chinese medicine, into spirituality,
I'll take
right?
yes.
Into how our emotions are behaving. And once we do that, people become empowered. They start to go, oh, I understand where my organs may play up when I go through stress. It
Mhm.
might be my liver meridian. It
Yeah.
may be because I'm holding a lot of anger, frustration, resentment. But once I let go of that, I understand that the liver pathway can actually help me with my purpose, with my direction, with courage in life, with my hun, my spirit in my eyes to show me the light, to show me the new way, to see beyond. And so we can move in both those worlds of moving into what needs to be learned and redirecting that energy and then activating that. Okay, let's find some acupuncture points that you can massage at home so that
Mm.
when you're moving into that, you've got something that you can push on to alleviate some of the pressure. So we're working on multi levels in this way.
Yeah. Oh, it's lush. Really, really lush. So
And the
let's lead in on,
philosophy is important, the
yeah, yeah.
philosophy. Yeah. And that's why I think in my workshops, I teach a lot more about the philosophy and that understanding of how each organ plays a part on our emotional health through each
Mm.
season. What emotions are going to come up for us? But what is it underlying that? What is the nature wanting for us to grow into in this season? Once we
Yeah.
know that, then you become so supercharged with so much wisdom. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Tell me about the men. Like you explained it beautifully too. Like I predominantly work with women because that's who comes, but I love to serve men. When men come, I'm like, like I get so excited because it's such a different it's a different experience
Yeah.
altogether, and I love it. So are you starting to get more men now? What's the situation like? How's
Yeah, a lot more men. And now I've actually teamed up with an Aboriginal company. And yeah, so they actually run workshops for corporate. And what they've actually asked me to do is actually come in and I'm bridging with them. I'm using the wisdom of Chinese medicine and spirituality to bridge with their medicine of the Aboriginal Native
mm,
people. And what we're doing is we're talking a lot about the native plants and how those native plants enhance our bodies and the wisdom of how that's nourishing our organs. So I bridge that in that way. I then connect to a lot of the Aboriginal music, the didgeridoo, like all of that is being played by them or their storytelling. And then I'm taking them through like this beautiful inner dream time journey through their own wisdom of their music and stories, and then adding light language that connects to that music to open up that portal within them, but also remind men that they are the warrior, that reconnection to the earth. And so we're doing Qigong movements on the earth. The workshops are on the earth, it's on the grass. And as we ripple the light language like this onto the earth, everything is flowing with us, the water, the trees, the wind. It's that real connection of all the elements and the remembrance of men connected to nature in this way.
mm-hmm.
And so when I take them into that inner dream time journey, it's that remembrance in that journey that their brothers are with them, that they're the leader, that they're running through the forest, that they have the gift of being able to come back into their power. Because I think a lot of the time they're losing their power, they're
Yeah.
stressed, they're
Mm-hmm.
not sometimes being honored or respected, or they're losing themselves and they don't know sometimes the direction they're going in, or they're having that midlife crisis
Yeah.
and they feel like they're doing this job because they have to provide, but they're not happy.
That's the
So
big
there's all of
thing.
this. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on for them. And you have to work very gentle with them.
I know
One
it's
step at a
very
time.
different.
It's very different compared to women. And I've had to learn a new level of patience for sure working with men. And that's okay. They've needed that motherly, loving energy. And so for me, I've never been very clinical in my approach. I've been very loving in my
Yeah.
approach because we need that. We need love. We need that
Mhm.
nurturing. Obviously, there's always that boundary, but we need that type of connection to take them into a safe space where they can just open and know that
Mhm.
no matter what, they're not going to be judged. They're
Yeah.
going to be seen for the soul that they are, a beautiful, loving human being. And so I'm always about encouragement. I'm always telling my patient, I'm so proud of you. I'm so, I
Yeah.
really love you. I'm always hugging them. I'm always, giving that connection because a lot of the time they're not communicating that to anyone else.
No, I
So their
agree.
stories, they'll say to me, they'll go, I know you're our acupuncturist, a healer, whatever, but they're like, you're like our everything. You're the one that knows everything. And so that is very humbling. And I don't take that lightly. It's a very beautiful thing that people trust me to be able to hold that type of sacred information
Mm.
and with so much love and integrity. So for me, it was very important to with spirit and the work that I was doing at the higher I was going and the different people I was meeting in this work, it was always about stripping down my ego. And last year was really that. It was humble myself over and over again to a point where I don't care about success in itself. I don't really care about where I'm going as long as I'm serving, as long as I'm doing it under closed doors. I don't need to be, out there in the world going, this is what I'm doing. Nah, I actually really don't care. I just want to be busy. That's it.
Yeah,
That's all
I'm
I've
with
asked for.
you.
You know?
Yeah.
I just let me be busy. And it's been very humbling because now it's that feeling of I don't need anything around me. I don't need fancy things. I can go back to my homeland with the most simple life and I'm happy. And this is why my private life's become so private. I don't want to share anything as much either because it's about being so happy on my own. And the things that bring me
Mhm.
joy is just for me. It's not to people please or show off or anything of those things. And for me, that is actually what has strengthened my own light. That remembrance of coming back into your authentic self, coming back into fully accepting who you are. Because then, if we don't do that, you're never going to be truly happy. And
No.
so it's teaching patients to come back into acceptance, come back into themselves through my own stories of healing myself. So everything I share is through understanding how they can use that as a way of healing, as a medicine. That's why
Mhm.
storytelling can be so powerful
It
when
can
we use it
be.
in the right way. It connects us. So we've
Yeah.
all experienced it. We can all relate to it in some way.
Mhm.
And for men, especially listening to their story where they have a safe space to be held, to be listened to, and to be honored. Yeah, in that way.
I mean, I love listening to women and men, but there's something so crystallizing for me and something that just feels so raw. And
Mm,
when I sit and listen to the stories of men, just the
yeah.
way they express it is so different. I mean, it's just so
Mm,
powerful.
mm,
Yeah, I'm like really wanting to plant a seed for more and more,
yeah.
because I think the next few years are going to be really interesting for all of us.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, especially sexually, our beautiful men are going to need space holding, just like we weren't taught, they weren't either. So it's
Yes.
like learning what real intimacy is, learning how to be one with your sexuality and not be sexualizing, right? Like just to
Mhm.
be one with the essence of experiencing and emerging and moving through sensuality without ownership, without claim, without the
Mm,
distortion and the dark forces and shit that are working through,
yeah. Yeah.
attached into the testes of men. I mean, there's so much, just like with our wombs, right? Like there's a tree
Yeah.
in their testes. And
Yeah.
so just looking at how ancestrally it just pours through our lines and our loins.
Yeah. Literally. Our loins.
Yeah. I'm like, "Oh, okay, and what are we gonna do?" Yeah, so it's
Mm,
big work, and also it's so beautiful to think that even just one person that you touch, and if that person's gonna reproduce, I mean, like, it's part of a family tree, like, it's part
yeah.
lineage healing is dope.
Yes.
Like, it really is. In that way, it's like it's so like, you really get to see that you're not just shifting a person, like a
Mm,
soul, but that soul is connected to that web of other souls. It's shifting an entire
yeah.
it's shifting DNA lines and like entire populace of folks.
Yes. Yes.
Aw,
It
so
becomes so,
beautiful.
and this is why it's such potent work, what we're doing.
Yeah.
Really, you're healing the lineage, you're healing the future lineage, you're
Yeah.
generationally. And it's beautiful as well. Like sometimes I'll also get the women and the men to go back in their lineage as we're going through the light language, as we're
Amen.
going through the journey, and they feel it. It's the remembrance of who I was and what I was, and every part of your ancestors is connected to you. You're
Oh,
here. You've been born. Like how much gratitude do we need to give to them? And
yeah.
for some people, they don't even think about it. They don't even think about. They just
No.
think about their grandmother, and that's probably how far back they go, and they don't connect all the way. And even for me, learning about through my own spirituality, understanding my father's lineage and understanding the abuse of where he's come from, understanding that he was also abused.
Yeah.
So when I then went into my own spiritual process where I realized through my own healers that I was working with as well, to understand that in my very last life I was a priest, a Hindu
Mhm.
priest, and I was my grand grandfather that
Okay.
I was reincarnated
Yeah.
as. And so it's very interesting that I was my father's grand grandfather.
Mm.
And then I was reincarnated here. So there was just this full circle that
Yeah.
starts to come through. And more of a loving presence can come through because I've now detached from that emotional trauma. I can see higher as a higher perspective of
Yeah.
that. And now on a soul level, I connect to my dad as
Mhm.
if as the feeling of I've never been abused. So there's
Mm.
just that type of level of love.
Yeah.
I know that foundationally though, when women have been sexually abused, there is a foundational fuck up.
Yeah.
Like
For
you
sure.
can't get rid of that. And so there is a point where people who've been abused have to be able to explain and understand be able to communicate with others that there's a certain thing that you may need in your life because of that. So for
Mhm.
me last year was that recognizing of people think because I've done so much work on myself, I've gone to this elevation of working through any of my triggers that I'm healed. And
Yeah.
that is not true. No
No.
one's
As
healed.
long as you're in your body.
We're
Yeah.
always healing. And so sometimes people hear my story of abuse and listen to it as a story, but not as a lived experience. It still affects me.
Yeah.
And the way it affects me is that there are moments in my life where that little girl is going to call me home.
Mhm.
And that means when that happens, my career, what I'm doing, my friendships, my life, none of it matters anymore.
Yeah.
I'm being called to go into solitude.
Mhm.
And so when that happens, some people feel triggered by that. Oh, what, what, you're not communicating with
Yeah.
us. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, this is now I understand that I need to communicate it instead of saying I need solitude. This is my little girl. She'll call me home because I'm veering off track a little bit.
Yeah.
And that means going into my temple at home and staying
Mhm.
there and connecting and reflecting, or it might mean me going back to Sri Lanka
Yeah.
and dropping everything because I need to return back to my authentic self.
Yeah.
This is all just me in my magic.
Yeah.
That's not who I am. The true authentic me is that Sri Lankan girl on the homeland,
Yeah.
being in nature, being with the land. That's me. That's who you get day to
Yeah.
day. So it's recognizing the true authenticity of who you are
Yeah.
and explaining it in a way that these little things that have happened in your life will always sit there, but that's okay. Once we can just honor that, there's a gift in that because that little girl within me has come back now with wisdom.
I
And
love
so now she's there to pull me back into that wisdom.
it.
And she's the truth seeker. So she will show me what is real, what is truth, what is not in alignment, which is what happened last year for me, where there was an ending of my relationship. There was an ending of my best friend. There was an ending of another friend. I had to move. There was so much going on in my life. Yet at each stage, I accepted everything because I
Yeah.
knew that something was calling me home. And as that was happening, those transitions were beautiful. There was so much grace in it. There was so much wisdom in that. And we can live, we've got to understand that the journey is not straight. It's not like this. It's a wave. And people forget
Yes.
that sometimes where they go through the healing journey. Oh, Dr. Tash, we've gone through this. Why is this happening again? Well, I thought I learned the lesson,
Yeah.
but it's a spiral. It's a
We're in
spiral.
a
We're gonna,
spiral.
we're gonna come back to it,
Yeah.
but we're gonna come back to it with more wisdom, a
Yeah.
different awareness, a deeper reflection, right? So it's just understanding that there are tides, there are waves, and we just got to ride that and
We
understand that there's
do.
gifts in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just because there is even like levels of, I say mastery, but it's like being in the mystery over and over again. I mean,
Mm,
it does, none of it defines us. And it's like a consistent liquid container of, like, as you said, the spiral.
yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we don't hurt. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that things, if anything, sometimes the experiences might get even more intense, but we
Yeah.
have more trust
Mm,
in the power of like what is going to be transformed. It doesn't mean it's pleasant. It doesn't mean that karma doesn't continue to move even with the dharma being fully present. Like, there's
yeah.
still things that we can't avoid because we're part of living in a collective world,
Yeah.
in a dual world, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really interesting, that projection, but we see that, I guess, because of, for many reasons, but the parental lineages and how we, this giving away of authority even
Yeah.
projected onto spiritual people, the priest, or like there has been
Mm,
always this way of like, let me give away my power to, instead of how can I hold power in a
mm,
place with other people that are holding power too? Like, how
yeah.
can everybody be present in their own power? Like you and I sitting here, and with women, that's the biggest thing, like, especially for us in this work. It's like your power is vital and gorgeous, and I can see it, and I have my own. So we all get to the place where everybody's power can coexist in
Yeah.
harmony without
Yeah.
us trying to manipulate, to dominate, or take it from one
Yeah.
another. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And it is sad when that happens. And I think that's
it
why
is.
when we remember the womb energy, when we remember to drop into her, it's about connectedness. It's about coming together. It's a circle,
Yes. It's
right?
a circle, and
Circle. And
everybody has a place in the circle.
exactly. And we're all part of that beautiful quilt that we're weaving. And without each weave, that would unstitch.
Yeah.
So it's just remembering that. And, I always say to young girls when I'm talking to them, I always bring them into that awareness with their period, where I
Mm.
say, there's a magical connection with our period blood, because isn't it crazy to think that when you're with your friends, all of a sudden you all start to regulate together and your period syncs up? Isn't that awkward? Isn't that funny? And they'll be like, yeah, that does happen. I'm like, yes, because it's coming together. So it's teaching them at that moment. This is about what the period blood is about. That is what the womb is about. It's about connection. It's about coming together. It's not about competition. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about that. So if we
Mm.
can educate it with our young girls first and get them connected to their bodies in this beautiful divine way, it shifts the collective. It shifts so much of this, you know, abuse, competition,
Mhm.
bullying, all of this stuff that happens in that teenage years. And I get it because I was like that.
Yeah,
I
me
was known
too.
as, I was so angry. I was known as the bitch of the school.
Mhm.
Like that's how volatile I was. And so for me, it's so important to change that narrative, to go a little bit more where we can dissolve that a bit more
Yeah.
and see a different way, a new way,
Mhm.
and bring that type of education into the system. For me, I've always tried to really want to come into the school system in this way, but still
It's rigid.
it's still very
I
rigid.
know. Yeah.
Has to be anatomy, it has to be this. And I'm like, well, your period is not just about the anatomy of what happens, it's
Yeah.
an experiential, emotional experience.
Yeah.
That's another thing that women, young girls feel: shock, scared,
Yeah.
fearful. You got to tackle that. Otherwise, they're going to have that crisis and they're going to
Mhm.
go, hey, I don't want to be a woman. I don't want to connect to that. I want to just use a tampon. I don't want to know. I
Yeah.
want to go on a pill. I don't want to connect to this area and be that sacredness of being a woman. You're
Exactly.
rejecting that.
And we're seeing this obviously incredibly prevalent in so many ways. And I'm going to tap on it, but I'm not going to go into it too much. But with the transgender movement, there's
Mm,
so many different ways, the birth control, everything is like, let's shut it down, let's stop it. And then also, I don't know if you're seeing this a lot in your side of the world, but here in the States, it's like the indoctrination and the introduction to all sorts of psychiatric drugs is coming on the scene big time from like 13 on. So the kids
mm,
are already drugged from, yeah, it's like I have to just breathe for a second into that because it pisses me off still in all the ways. And my mother heart is like, what are we going to do about this, Divine Mother?
yeah.
What what are we going to do?
Mm,
But this like infiltration from the system that comes in, and it's like I can understand why these children are feeling this way. I mean, look at the system they've grown up in, and all the,
mm,
the sexual abuse and the lineage trauma.
yeah.
But and like, how do we do that? How do we find a way? I trust it's happening, but like, to have all of us there and available, and I don't know how. I Same thing with me with dancing with the system. Like, do I actually go in that system? I'm like, feels kind of limiting. I want
Yeah.
them to have the meat of it.
Yeah.
um so, and that's how, like, you and I think originally, I mean, we were already friends, but that connection of like, when I see other women leaning into doing the work with the youth, I mean, as you just cannot not be touched by that. It's like the
Oh, yeah.
biggest work of our time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
huge.
it's absolutely so soul nourishing when I get these
Yeah.
young girls, because I'll get young girls from like the age of, well, even as young as 8, but
Yeah.
usually around that sort of 12 up to about 16. And so the parents will come to me because they've tried everything. There are some doctors that are referring me, which is
Great.
great. And so when they'll come in, usually I'll start off always with that acupuncture and getting them connected to their womb and regulating their hormones, because a lot of them have got
Yes.
really bad irregular periods, bleeding heavily, very psychological trauma as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
anxiety. So once we start doing that, then I just take them into like little meditations.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is while the needles are in, I'll place my hand on their heart, on their womb space, and then I'll take them through a guided meditation where I'm educating them. So I'm
Yeah.
planting little seeds of education while they're in that theta brainwave.
Yeah.
So it's tapping into their subconscious. And what I really realized with young girls is they're so good at visualizing.
They are so good at visualizing.
So good. It's just amazing. So once we do that, I can get them into that portal of their womb, shift that, cleanse it,
Yeah.
move that into that beautiful garden, and then they'll tell me which flowers they're seeing.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to create that beautiful connection of that place looking like a garden, that inner garden.
Got
And
it.
once we do that, then it starts getting that little bit of that breakthrough when I can go a little bit deeper. And
Yeah.
it's also that education for the mother. The mother will come in and be like, wow, I don't even know this.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful transition when then the mother will go, I think I need to come and see you.
So yeah.
And then you're working on both generations, right? That
Mm-hmm.
connection with mother and daughter, and then take them through into those workshops as well. So it's just divine. It's so beautiful seeing them
It's
awaken at that
yeah.
age. And then they'll go to school and tell them these
With
little
their
fun
little
facts that
friends.
I've told
Yes.
them. Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
so good. It's really beautiful.
A
Mm.
few months ago, I had a 10-year-old girl and she was like super busty and thick. Like her body was like blooming. She was coming for with her sister to talk about menstruation. And
Mm-hmm.
so like this place of where her mind is like a child, but her body looks like a young woman. I mean, it's just happening so much now. These blooming, gorgeous little mamas, and they're
Mm.
like giggling and they're 10-year-old kids. So like finding that place of where you can like bridge and like where is the place to plug in for them to be like, oh, okay. So I'm like, what do you call her? And she's like,
Yeah.
Coochie Lala. I'm like, all right, cool. I can do Coochie Lala. So I'm like, have you seen it? She's like, no. And
Mm.
she's laughing. I'm like, okay, let's take it from here. So I like get her the hand mirror. I'm like, go in the bathroom, put your
Mm.
leg on the side of the bathtub, and just, I want you to look at yourself. You need to know what you look like. So you know
Yeah.
when you don't look like that, if there's something wrong, what's
Yeah.
growing, all the things. And so she's like, okay, she was super embarrassed, but laughing and loved the connection. I've got
Yeah.
like pictures on the wall. So she's like getting to look at another vagina because we're not in
Yeah.
a culture where a mother is showing her daughter this is what a woman's body looks like. So they're going online to look and they're trying to, find it elsewhere and they don't know how to pull it from within. So
Yeah.
she's
Oh.
like, I'm gonna go look at it. And she leans back and she's like, how long do I have to stay there? We just were hysterical. It was so cute. So she came back in and I was like, so how do you feel? And she's like, that was weird, but it was good. And
Mm.
so she went home to her family and she like told her other sisters, get in the bathroom and go look at your Kuchi Lala. But like, even if that's the seed for that day, right? Like
Mm.
just to, so that will be a seed for the future. But for her little 10-year-old self, like that's enough for today. Okay. So just looking at like, how can we meet them where they are
Yeah.
and just find a place where the conversation is normal to even talk
Yeah.
about it
Mm.
because it's like, oh, I'm like, I have like a real deep longing to like sexually educate from a perspective of like, I love myself now and I didn't
Mm.
always. And the way
Mm.
we move our bodies and share our bodies and our fluids and the way we do the things we do when we don't yet know how special we are and how
Yeah.
sacred our bodies are. I'm like, I just want to imbue all these like sacred bodies that they like get
Oh,
the medicine before they have to end up on the abortion table, before they
yeah.
have to end up on the birthing table alone, like all these places
Mm.
where we can like intervene and be
Yeah.
like, "Wah."
Give
Yeah.
me 1 second. I'm just going to get my plug. My
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
battery's
Go
dying.
ahead. Okay.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
My laptop was running out at the time.
Perfect.
I was like, whoops.
So
But yeah, no, I agree. That's
tell
beautiful.
me, is there anything like that else that you feel like you want to dive into?
Um,
Is there anything that's
I
coming to
think
you?
it's just coming back to the simplicity for women, because if there's women out there going, okay, where do I begin? Where do I start?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's just keeping it simple first.
Mm,
Really just looking at the way that what emotions are coming up in you, what are those repetitive patterns that are coming up on you, how is your menstrual cycle,
yes.
right? How is it behaving? Is it regular? Is it not regular? Looking at the color of the blood, all of these things, just creating that little bit of like a diary of
Mm,
information so that you can become more aware and understanding what looks normal, what's not normal
yeah.
is that first part of understanding your body.
Mm,
And also embracing the emotions. I think sometimes we just want to block everything,
yeah.
and we've got to really allow the emotion to move through us, because when the blood moves in our period cycle, the emotion moves.
Yeah.
This is not a bad thing. So if we're holding on to grief, if we're holding on to anger, if we're holding on to sadness, frustrations, all of that needs to come up so that
Yeah.
once we release that, then wisdom can flow through, a deeper
Mm-hmm.
understanding of what's really happening, a deeper reflection. And I used to always say to my patients, I'm not scared to cry. I'm not scared to be in my wild nature of anger and frustration. I'm not going to go, blasting it everywhere, but it's okay. It's part of who we are as women. We're
Mm-hmm.
emotional because we are, the waters are moving
We
through
are.
us. We are like the great ocean. So really allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to release. There are times where you'll need to go a bit deeper and reflect, but there are times where you just need to let it move through you,
Yeah.
right? So we don't need to always go into depth with it.
Yes.
Allow yourself to really let your emotions move through you. And then at the same time, understanding that connection between your heart and womb. It's the most sacred
Mm-hmm.
place we'll ever meet. And this is where women get cancer: breast,
Yep.
lungs, cervical,
Mm-hmm.
um, hysterectomies,
Yep.
that are being taken out. Like there's so much that goes on into these two sacred spaces of a woman.
Yep.
And so we need to nourish. When we give from the heart all the time, we're depleting the
Mm-hmm.
yin in Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So what happens when we get cancer? It's all about you. You come back to you. It's a healing
Yeah.
crisis.
It is.
So having that balance between yin and yang, balance between giving and receiving, balance between the masculine and feminine is important. It's in
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's in nature. It's in the human being. It's in absolutely life.
Yeah.
So knowing when to rest, when to move, when to reflect. There are moments where as a woman you always feel like you have to do everything, look after the kids, work, provide. And when we actually stop, we feel like we're being lazy. A lot of women
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm
Yeah.
being lazy, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't be resting. But actually understanding that in that moment, you're giving back to you. You're filling your own cup, you're nourishing your organs, you're nourishing your life, you're nourishing your emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
when you do that, you fill that up, you can do more. So balance, learn to rest, even if it's 10%, because that will shift your life in a big, big way. And the second thing is, as well, is just placing one hand on your heart, one hand on your womb. Just connect. And I guarantee you, if you just hold this pose for 5, 10 minutes, there's just a nourishing feeling that moves through you, a centeredness, a loving sensation, and that's just such a simple thing to do that you can give back to yourself every day, every night, returning home to yourself.
Mm. It is. It's so simple.
Yeah.
It just requires the presence to just choose to do it. It's really like a decision,
Mm.
like, oh, I know to do this and I can always go to this.
Yeah.
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 I love that. Thank you for that.
And it's just,
Gorgeous.
I think the womb, the everyone's womb has its own story,
Mm,
her own name, her own wisdom.
amen.
And it is that divine mother energy. So I always say to women, when you go through the portal of the womb, no matter how much abuse, no matter what you've experienced in your life, it is pure love.
It is
You enter this
pure love.
space, it's pure love. The wisdom that comes through is pure love. There's nothing scary about it.
Hmm.
So once you connect to the inner part of you, it's so beautiful, because I think for so many of us, we always connect to our guides, which is always outside of us, which is
Yeah.
still beautiful. I connect to my
Yes.
guides all the time. But this inner world,
It's a whole different type of world. Yeah.
yeah, that is what creates stability, a
Yeah.
strong core, a strong foundation. You're rooted in this life. You're not going just airy fairy. You're learning how to
Yeah.
live in this world through that connection to the womb,
Mm.
through that portal of the pelvis. All of that is going to create a safe space for you. And safety is a big thing for us in this world right
It
now.
is. It is a
And we can
big.
enter that.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah.
can enter that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love
Mm,
that. Yeah. It's so beautiful. I feel so much courage in that. Right? Like
mm,
when you're rooted, you can really summon more courage. You're more connected to your fire. When your elements are balanced, you're more connected to all of it, right?
yeah.
That deeper understanding. Mm,
Mm.
it's yummy. I'm so grateful that we all get to do this incredible work together.
Me too. Me too. It's so
Yeah,
beautiful to meet people all around the world doing this
I know.
incredible, incredible divine work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And we can all come together like
I
this.
know. It's a really, really such a gift. Such a gift. And
Mhm.
I have no doubt that there's other, I mean, we come in this incarnation again, here we are, and just the fragrance is there. I mean, there's just
Yes.
we've been building and working in other ways for a long time to get to where we are now. Yeah.
Definitely.
So beautiful. Well, tell everybody how they can reach you. I'll put obviously your information and everything below, but and I know that you're on the other side of the world, but I know that you do online stuff too. And so, yeah, share
Definitely.
anything that, like, as far as how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. So I do the online workshops as well. So for all of the integrative pelvic health and integrative breath flow, they usually go for about 2 hours, the workshops, and you can do that all online. And then we can do a consult afterwards as well to see how you're going in your process. So there's about 4 to 5 parts to these different workshops. So you can also contact me through my website, which is just info.drtashini.com. Sorry, that's my email. Drtashini.com.
Yeah.
And then my website as well is Dr. Tashini as well. So
All right. Perfect.
www.drtashini.
All right.
And
Good.
then, yeah, and then Instagram,
Yeah.
Dr_Tashini is a really good way to get in contact with me as well, because I use social media quite a lot. Everyone
Okay.
posting and connecting, and yeah, giving like good content on there as well, lots of information. So
Good.
free content. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, good. So we'll list that for our listeners. And just wanted to thank you again for coming on and thank everybody who's listening. All prayers that you receive, all the wisdom and everything that you need, and that you just take these simple steps to
Mm,
listen to yourself and come home. So
yeah.
thanks for listening and till next time.
Thank you.